This week on part 2 of The Real Housewives of Miami.
She was cheating on Martina with a Haitian mortician. Wait, that's when you told me everything. You were with a Haitian mortician. You used to take him to the motel, pay for the motel, bring the champagne, and had to give him a coffee.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to be recapping the second part of Season 7 reunion for The Real Housewives of Miami. Let's get right into it. Okay, we gotta talk about this. So we pick up where we left off last week. So Julia dropped this major bomb. She says, Andy, at the Hamptons, Adriana and I slept together. Adriana busted out laughing, but Lisa's first reaction was like, what would you do that? You were married. But everybody else was just like, WTF, what the hell, what the F. I remember this trip. It was the first season of the reboot. It was Larsa who had a trip to the Hamptons. And most of you may remember that's also the trip where Julia proposed to Adriana. She got on one knee and asked her to be her best friend forever. Now, if I recall correctly, I do also believe this is the same trip where Julia had taken so many shots of some alcohol with pickles, and she was so sick. I remember they had to have a doctor come out. They had to put an IV. Anyway, Julia says, I was ashamed about this and I was embarrassed. And by the way, Martina does know. So then Lisa says, well, why are you bringing it up then? Julia says, because I was leaving a mental psychological abuse by Adriana, and the whole left couch just laughed. Like, they were like, oh, come on, really? Like, that's your reasoning? You brought this out because you were being mentally, psychologically abused by Adriana. Like, come on. Julian, and then even Larsa, she says to them, stop, y'all are being so insensitive. Which, by the way, the fact that Larsa is saying to anyone else that they're being insensitive is wild. Julia says that when she and Adriana became friends, she and Martina were not in a good place. She was down, and Adriana knew how vulnerable she was. So now Julia is sort of flipping this on Adriana. She says, you knew my emotional state, and you knew how I felt, and you wanted to control my friendships, and you silenced me, and you were blackmailing me with this. Because she kept telling me that I was here because of her, and that I got my paycheck because of her. Adriana says, I gave you the opera idea. I helped you with everything with you being on this show. Andy then asks Adriana, did you sleep with Julia at the Hamptons? Adriana says, yes, many times. Because we shared a bed. A lot. He's like, yeah, but did you actually have sex with her? And she says, I don't have a dick. And Andy's like, you can have sex without a dick. And she's like, not really. We slept, we kissed, but that was it. I never scissored anyone. Oh my gosh. Julia then says, Adriana, did you not blackmail me? You did. And Adriana goes in. She says, never. You're an imposter. You're a fraud. You have imposter syndrome. What's your real name? Tell me that. What's your new name? How about that? We all have a spy in this group, and her name is Julia. Or Gulia. I didn't change my name, okay? I didn't change my name to Adrienne when I came on this show. I kept my real name, but you changed yours. Andy then asks Marysol what's her reaction. She's kind of speechless. Then he asks everybody else, like, do they think they actually slept together? Some of them raised their hand. Lisa, not really. Lisa's biggest issue with this whole thing, and I think very rightfully so, is if this is indeed true, Julia was married. Julie's the one who cheated on Martina, if that actually happened. And by the way, for Alexia and Kiki to they were defending Julia over this, that was horrible. Like, what a joke. Andy then asks Julia, did Martina know you were going to say this tonight? And Julia says yes, and that she cried. Andy asks, well, why was it important for you to say it? Julia says, because there's so many misconceptions. For such a long time, Adriana didn't let me speak my truth. I want everybody to know that I didn't ditch my friend for anybody else. I wanted all of us to be together, but at the same time, I've always felt guilty about what we did, and that's why I couldn't have her as the godmother of my children. I feel ashamed. Julia then says to Lisa, do you remember at the finale, Adriana kept saying to me, I'm going to say it, I'm going to say it. She was clearly holding it over me. So then Marysol's like, yeah, so it sounds like you wanted to say it first. Adriana says, I wasn't. Okay, I was never going to say anything, but since you want to go there, Julia, we can go there. I was never going to bring this up because I would never destroy your marriage. I'm not that type of person, but since you brought that out, it's all on the table. So, yes, Julia was in a bad place at the time, and she was cheating on Martina with a Haitian mortician. And she told me everything. She told me the Haitian mortician you would take to the motel, and you would pay, and you would bring the champagne, and you even gifted him a coffee maker. You forgot about that, bitch? And she also had another lover, a cop. Andy was shocked. They all were. But of course, Alexia the Barracuda has to jump in. She's like, well, what about you? What about you? And then Julia, it's funny because as Adriana's exposing all of this, Julia is acting like she doesn't know what Adriana is saying. But then when Andy actually asks her, did you have these relationships that she's talking about? Julia's like, well, I shared things with Adriana in confidence. And Martina knows. So Adriana is doing this. She's being malicious. I was like, Julia is for those streets. And I just can't believe how she's now trying to be the victim. How are you the victim in all of this? But you guys, y'all have no idea how much I was laughing as Adriana was saying all this, because it was crazy. It was crazy, the things that were coming out of her mouth, but hilariously unbelievable. But yeah, Julia tries to flip it on Adriana, trying to act like the victim. I can't believe it. And then Adriana says, you're a cheater, and I would never go for your dirty little whore. And then she gets up and goes to sit on another side of the couch. So then they break for lunch. It's very clear that Andy has his favorites. And I said this last week. They've been protecting Julia for a long time. It's very clear. So Julia is saying, I never betrayed Adriana. We slept together once, and we also messed around in the Versace mansion, which was where Alexia's bachelorette party was at. She says, we had a one-night stand. I still love Adriana, but she made me do it. She made me say it. Andy asks, is Martina going to be upset? And then Julia says, yes, but I told her why I had to do it. But the way that Julia is just like so callously like just talking about these affairs, like it's just crazy. So now they're in their dressing rooms. So we see like different conversations being had about this at the same time. So Lisa is over there with Adriana asking her, did you guys do this? And she's doing like scissor motions. Alexia is over there asking Julia, like, what did you do? Did she eat you out? Did you eat her out? Now all of a sudden Julia doesn't want to answer the questions. So you can say you slept with someone, you can say y'all had sex, you can say y'all were intimate, but she doesn't want to say what they did. I did thought it was very nice that Russell was there with Guerdy. He was waiting for her in her dressing room, so they ate lunch together. Stephanie and Larsa are talking about it too. Larsa is literally justifying Julia, quote unquote, slipping and falling, aka having affairs. That is horrible. This little mean girl club, when it comes to Alexia, Marysol, Julia, Larsa, and Kiki, are the worst. I can't. They're like the Fox 4-5 of Miami. Alexia did seem very curious, though, I will say, about what could have happened between Julia and Adriana. And, I mean, she and Julia are very close now, and she's single, so maybe they'll hook up too. Wouldn't be surprised. So then Adriana decides to storm into the dressing room with Julia and the other girls. She says, what are you guys doing, rehearsing or listening to more lies? You were such a fool, Julia. I would have taken your secret to the grave. Julia says, you were holding it over my head. And Adriana says, no, I wasn't. You were married. You're married, going around kissing everyone. You're an imposter. Julia then wants to say, well, you kept telling me that if I ever defended Kiki and Marysol, you would take me down with you. I am in the side of justice. To which Adriana says, justice? You're a cheater. So then after this lunch break, they go back to the set to continue the reunion. And then Andy says, okay, I kind of just want to touch on this one more time. Adriana, did you two mess around in the Hamptons? Adriana says, okay, I need to say this. The first time I met Julia, ever, she went up to me and said, you are so pretty, you look like Snow White. Then she started to talk to me about how good my boobs were. She then proceeds to invite me to the bathroom so that I can show her my boobs. And then she showed me her butt. So they were doing some show and tell. Anyway, Adriana says she clearly had a crush on me and she wanted to seduce me like she tries to do with everyone. But then Andy still wants to know, like, did you or did you not do it at the Hamptons? Adriana says, well, she patted me. She kept saying there was no quote-unquote scissoring, so I'm guessing, this is just me speculating, maybe they kissed, maybe they cuddled, and maybe they gently rubbed on you. I can't even, but yeah, come on, say I don't think it was like a full-on explicit rated X scene. I don't think it was all that, but there was probably something. But if you think this is crazy, Julia then says that she said this today because she felt muzzled after, and that she felt scared. She also says that after the Hamptons, Adriana asked her, would you leave Martina for me? What? But wait, this gets even crazier, because Adriana says that this season, when they were in Spain, after one of the nights, Julia pinned her against the wall and said, spend the night with me. I mean, you can't make this up, you guys. And this is what these women were saying. Julia says, well, that's not what happened. It was just too much. It was too much. And then Andy says, well, what I do think is interesting is that at the beginning of the day, Adriana actually seemed willing to move forward with you, Julia. But, now you kind of just threw this bomb out here. Julia says, well, just because I said what I said, it doesn't mean that I hate her. All I want to know is if Adriana ever even liked me as a friend, or was it all a storyline? Julia's so pathetic. And then Adriana says, I actually did. I loved you as my friend. And then Adriana has a gift for her. It's in a box. And then Julia opens it, and it's like a fake red heart in a box, kind of symbolize, you broke my heart, or whatever the case may be, Okay. But it's time to move on from now. So the next segment is for Keke. So they take a look at her story this season about rebuilding relationship with her dad, which I thought was it was very nice to see that part of her personal story. So Keke talks about what this meant, how it helped her heal. She has started to realize that a lot of the unhealthy relationships that she has had with men stem from daddy issues, and she's actually been celibate since March of 2024. So it's been over a year. So that's good. What's crazy is that she found out that, we saw it in the season, she found out she has a new brother, but her dad wants her to support all these babies that he's having, which is definitely not okay. But Keke also gives, she gives some credit to Lisa. She says that Lisa talking about her dad definitely encouraged her even more to talk to her own dad. And Lisa says that, yeah, because she's very glad that she got to reconnect with her dad, but she really wishes that she had more time, because he died right away after they reconnected. They also touch on the threats that Keke was getting over the parole system policy that she talked about. And Andy says, this is a cast it's such a melting pot. I'm sure that hearing Keke talk about this, it must have brought a lot of y'all together. And they say that, yeah, it definitely did. Because you got to remember, literally every single person on this cast is either an immigrant or the child of an immigrant. So it's definitely a very unique experience, which I can appreciate from Miami. Moving on, they go over the Alexia versus Stephanie feud of the season. So they take a look back at the scenes, and then Alexia says that she honestly wasn't expecting that from Stephanie. She wasn't expecting Stephanie to come for her, because when Larsa brought her in, they thought that the four of them were going to be besties. Larsa, Marysol, Alexia, and Stephanie. But Alexia says, but what I started to notice was that she was making a lot of comments and poking at me. Stephanie says, no, that's not true. But Andy says, well, the first interaction that you guys had, you did say that her husband was garbage. Stephanie says, well, in my defense, let me explain that. When I met with Marysol, Julia, and Larsa for happy hour before the baby shower, they talked about Alexia and Todd. And the girls had nothing but negative things to say about Todd and how badly he had treated Alexia. So that's why she had that notion. She still apologizes for saying it that way in her delivery or whatever. Alexia says to her, well, no, the happy hour was after. And then Stephanie's like, no, you're wrong. The happy hour was before, because that's when I met Julia for the first time, and then I was invited to the baby shower. Alexia says, well, that day you didn't even say hello to me. You just made the garbage comment. But they roll back the tapes. That's not true. Of course, Stephanie said hello to Alexia. Andy says, well, Adriana felt like Alexia was threatened by Stephanie. And then Alexia, she goes off and she says, oh, whatever. Adriana says that every season. We actually rallied for Stephanie. We wanted her to come on the show. As a matter of fact, her biggest reservation to be on the show was having to be around Adriana. And then Stephanie said, whoa. Let's be clear. My reservations with Adriana were because of what you were all telling me about her. But now she's actually like the nicest one. And he says, well, Stephanie said Alexia likes to talk down on women. Do you guys agree? A lot of them did agree because it's true. In regards to the plane, people were saying that, she was bragging about it too much. She was dangling it. Stephanie says that when she was a kid, she was always excited to show her toys, and she was excited for other kids to show their toys as well. But she realizes now that in reality, people are actually not really happy when you show and tell your things, especially when they don't have them themselves. To be honest, I never really cared about her bragging about the plane. Yeah, it got a little bit of annoying, but I didn't really mind it. Miami is known to be one of the wealthier of the franchises, so it is what it is. Alexia says that she thinks Stephanie was just trying to find validation through that, and she says that she had actually spoken with Guerdy at the beginning of the season, and that Guerdy had said that a lot of the girls wanted to be friends with Stephanie because of her wealth. So then that's when Kiki jumps in and she says, well, let me say this. There's a narrative that people have been putting out there that we are racist in this cast. I don't think that's true. Are there classism issues like having to do with wealth? Yeah, maybe, but racism, no. And I want to touch that based on the narrative that is being said on social media. Clearly that was directed at Guerdy. Guerdy then tries to explain how they treated her differently. She can do the slightest thing, but she is painted out as the worst one, but no one really cared what she had to say. They didn't even bother to listen. I feel bad for her. It's like it falls on deaf ears. Anyway, Andy then addresses Todd's social media comments that he has made, where it seems like he's talking about Alexia. Stephanie says that her opinion still stands. She doesn't think that he was ever good enough for Alexia and that he wants to be famous. And then Alexia and Stephanie say one nice thing about each other and what they learned about each other and whatnot. And then they close the segment off by doing Stephanie's chest bump thing by saying, oh, I'm Alexia. So that was that. So then to close off this second part, we move on to Larsa. She has a new boyfriend, also a basketball player, also younger than her. And this leads to the Lisa and Larsa feud, which I'm so over. Andy does ask Lisa, what did you mean in the season when you said the whole world knows who you are, when you were talking about Larsa? Lisa says, well, there is a general consensus. You can ask anyone. Ask ChatGPT. They do have a certain idea of Larsa. And then Larsa is like, well, I was married to a superstar. I have superstar kids. I have companies. I bought my house. I pay my rent. And Lisa says, yeah, with the money you got from your divorce. So they start to go back and forth, but then Stephanie actually asks ChatGPT about Larsa, and it gives her like a generic response. Anyway, Larsa begins to cry because she says that the breakup with Marcus was just very difficult. It hurt her kids. And Lisa's like, I didn't know, like, you didn't tell me any of that. And then Andy asks Lisa about the moment that Larsa, when they were in Milan, she made the comment saying to Lisa, if you don't know if your dad is going to make it, why are you here? So then Lisa says, I'm going to get emotional. Give me a tissue. And that was the end of the episode. Oh my gosh, you guys. This was crazy. At the end of the day, though, it was pretty hilarious. I haven't laughed this hard during a reunion in a while. It was so funny. I mean, Adriana was on a roll, and I do believe these affairs happened. And shame on Julia. Like, honestly, that is so gross for her to have been doing all that. I also do remember one of the prior seasons when Larsa went up to Julia. And do you guys remember when she said to Julia, I saw you, no, she said, my friend saw you making out with a guy at a restaurant. And then Julia tried to, like, downplay it, like, oh, you know, it's just my friend. It was probably either that person or who knows, maybe one of the many. Unbelievable. Get rid of Julia, please. But you guys, what were your thoughts about this second part? Definitely very dramatic. Let me know your thoughts. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next time. Y'all have a great one. Bye.